All right, so we're taking a deep dive today into the life of Hassan Ibn Thabit.
The poet of the Prophet Muhammad.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And we've got these excerpts from a lecture by Dr. Omar Suleiman that are going to kind of guide our deep dive today. And just to kind of start things off,
Yep.
Hassan wasn't just any poet.
No.
He was considered the greatest poet of his time.
He was the poet laureate, you could say, of the time. Yeah.
So his words were powerful, used to defend the Prophet and spread the message of Islam.
Absolutely. And one of the most important things to keep in mind when we're talking about Hassan ibn Thabit is that pre-Islamic Arabia was a very, very different place than what we imagine, right? It was a world of tribal conflicts, a world of what they called dispoetry.
So like rap battles.
Exactly like the rap battles of the 7th century, where you would have poets that would go at it with their sharp wit and wordplay. And Hassan ibn Thabit was a master at that.
So basically like a celebrity.
Absolutely a celebrity, to the point that kings and rulers would invite him to their courts.
Oh, wow.
To compose poetry for them.
I see.
But here's where things get really interesting.
Okay.
His entire family.
Wow.
Parents and all 8 siblings.
And 8 siblings, wow.
Embraced Islam.
That's amazing.
So this is a whole family.
Right, a whole family conversion speaks to the power of the message.
The power of the message, and that it wasn't just a passive acceptance of the faith.
Right.
His father, for example, fought in the Battle of Badr.
Wow.
At 80 years old.
80 years old.
80 years old.
Talk about dedication.
Right, putting your faith into action in a very real way.
Yeah. So we've got this talented poet, family deeply touched by Islam, and then he meets the Prophet Muhammad himself in Medina.
Yes.
And he's 60 at this point?
60 years old, already a renowned poet with a long career behind him.
Can you imagine meeting the Prophet Muhammad at that stage in your life? Like, mind-blowing experience. And what's even more fascinating
is that it's said that he was initially hired to write poetry against the Prophet.
Oh, wow.
Like a takedown piece.
Really?
But upon meeting the Prophet, he was completely captivated.
Wow.
He saw something special in him.
So instead of a hit piece, he composed a poem praising the Prophet.
Exactly, a complete 180.
Wow. Do we know anything about that first poem?
Unfortunately, the exact content hasn't survived. But what we do know is that it was a turning point in his life. From then on, he dedicated his talent to defending the Prophet.
Wow.
And spreading the message of Islam.
Essentially became the Prophet's spokesperson.
Exactly. He was the spokesperson.
Traded in the disses for the
words of faith and inspiration.
Right. But wouldn't some people say that his initial motivation was more opportunistic?
Sure.
Like he saw which way the wind was blowing?
Yeah. And
he was kind of switched sides?
Human motivations are always complex.
Right.
But I think what's important to note is that his commitment to Islam only deepened as time went on. The poems that we have that survived are filled with such passion and conviction that it's hard to just reduce it to political maneuvering.
Yeah, that's true.
You know?
So how did this renowned poet, skilled in the art of verbal combat, how did he adapt his style?
That's where things get even more interesting.
Okay.
Because Hassan ibn Thabit was known for going after people's lineage.
Right.
Their family history.
Uh-huh.
And the Prophet challenged him on this.
Oh, really?
He said, how could he attack people in this way when the Prophet himself was part of their lineage?
I see.
So it was a real moment of reevaluation for him.
Yeah. So how did he navigate that shift?
So it said that he went to Abu Bakr, who was a walking encyclopedia of the Meccan tribes and their genealogies.
Right.
And he learned the intricacies of all of these families.
Okay.
And he would craft his poems in a way that would criticize the actions of the people, but he wouldn't go after their families.
Oh, I see. Threading a needle.
Exactly. He was threading a needle with his words, and he became known for his clever wordplay.
Right.
The Meccans were astounded by his knowledge of their families.
Wow.
They knew that something had changed
right.
about his approach to poetry.
This is quite a transformation, you know?
It is.
From tribal poet to a defender of the faith.
Yeah.
But how did his actual poems reflect this? Like, did the style, the language, the tone, did that revolve as well?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. His early poetry was all about sharp, biting satire.
Right.
It was meant to entertain, to provoke, and often to humiliate. But when he embraced Islam,
Yeah.
His poetry took on this new depth, a new
Right.
purpose.
Okay.
It became this vehicle for conveying the beauty of the faith,
Right.
defending its principles,
Okay.
inspiring the early Muslim community.
Got it. So how did this manifest, like in his actual words? Can you give us an example?
Yeah, one of the most striking examples is a poem that's actually found in Sahih Muslim, where Hassan responds to the Meccans who are mocking the Prophet.
Okay.
And it's this powerful piece that really showcases not only his loyalty, but also his evolved poetic style.
So what's so special about this particular poem?
Well, first of all, it opens with this bold declaration, "You mocked Muhammad, and I responded on his behalf, and I expect from Allah a reward."
Oh, wow.
Right from the start, he's setting the tone. He's not backing down.
Right.
He's not afraid to confront the mockers head on,
Yeah.
and he's doing it for a higher purpose,
Right.
seeking reward from God.
That's powerful. It's almost like he's saying, I'm not just defending a man, I'm defending a message, a way of life.
Exactly. And then he goes on to praise the prophet's virtues, describing him as a man of virtue and righteousness, whose nature is always nobility and loyalty.
I see.
He's contrasting the prophet's character
Uh-huh.
with the pettiness of the mockers,
Yeah.
highlighting the prophet's inherent goodness.
Okay, so he's using his words to paint a picture of the prophet, not just as a leader, but as a man of impeccable character.
Yes, and then he takes it a step further.
Okay.
He declares, "May my father, may my mother, may my honor be sacrificed for Muhammad."
Wow.
This is an incredibly powerful statement,
Right.
showing the depth of his devotion.
Yeah.
He's willing to sacrifice everything
That's intense.
for the prophet.
Really highlights that level of commitment
It does.
and love that the early Muslims had for the prophet.
Yeah, and then he shifts his focus to the Muslims who are fighting for their faith,
Yeah.
describing their horses charging into battle spears, thirsting for their enemies.
That's vivid imagery, capturing that intensity of the struggle.
Exactly. And then he has this incredibly poignant line. He says, "If you would have left us alone, we would have done Umrah."
Wow.
He's reminding the Meccans that they were the aggressors,
Right.
that the Muslims were simply trying to practice their faith peacefully,
Right.
turning the tables,
Yeah.
highlighting the injustice.
It's a brilliant rhetorical move.
It is.
He's not just defending, he's accusing, he's exposing the hypocrisy.
Yeah. And then he ends with this absolute knockout punch.
Oh, okay.
He says, "We have Jibril on our side. Find a match that's going to fight against him."
Wow.
He's invoking the angel Gabriel, the
Right.
messenger of God.
It's almost like he's channeling the voice of God himself saying, this is my prophet,
Yeah.
and I will defend him.
It's no wonder the prophet said that Allah supports him with the Holy Spirit whenever Hassan spoke,
Right?
because his words carried that much weight,
Yeah.
that much power.
So Hassan's poetry wasn't just about beautiful language or clever wordplay.
Right.
It was a weapon,
It
a
was.
tool for defending the faith,
Absolutely.
inspiring the believers and confronting the enemies of Islam.
Yes, and it's important to note that
Yeah.
Hassan wasn't the only one in his family that
Yeah.
embraced Islam so fervently.
Right. All 8 of his siblings converted.
Right.
It really is a testament to how deeply it resonated with them.
It is.
Did any of them leave behind a legacy as remarkable as Hassan?
Well, they may not be as famous as Hassan, but their commitment to Islam was no less inspiring.
Okay.
You have his brother, Abu Shaykh, for example,
Oh.
who was a Sahabi, which means he was a companion of the Prophet
Okay.
and fought bravely in the Battle of Badr.
Wow.
And he ultimately attained martyrdom.
Wow. So not only did he embrace Islam, but he gave his life for it.
Exactly, dying a shaheed in the battles of Uhud.
That's incredibly moving.
And then you have his brother, Qays,
Okay.
who also became Muslim
Uh-huh.
and witnessed many battles alongside the Prophet.
Right.
Their stories really highlight the impact
Yeah.
that Islam had on the entire family,
Right.
not just Hassan.
Yeah. And what about his sister, Khala bin Thabit? Did she contribute to the early Muslim community?
She did, and while she's not known for military feats or grand speeches,
Right.
she left behind a beautiful testament
Okay.
to the love and reverence
Yeah?
that the companions had for the Prophet.
Okay.
She only narrated one hadith,
Okay.
but it speaks volumes.
What does it tell us?
She describes the Prophet visiting her home
Okay.
and drinking from a water skin.
Right.
But she was so moved by this experience, so honored to have hosted the Prophet,
Wow.
that she cut off the top of the water skin where he drank from
Oh, wow.
and kept it with her for the rest of her life.
That's such a touching detail.
Yeah.
It really humanizes the prophet,
Mm.
showing him as someone who shared those everyday moments
Yes.
with his followers
Yes, it wasn't just about
and the impact those moments had on them.
grand pronouncements or battlefield victories.
Good.
It was about those simple interactions,
Yeah.
those moments of shared humanity
Right.
that solidified that bond between the prophet
Yeah.
and his companions.
It makes you wonder what those early days in Medina must have been like,
Yeah.
right? This tight-knit community,
Yeah.
facing persecution, finding solace and strength in their faith.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And Hassan's poetry
Yeah.
played a crucial role in shaping that community's narrative,
Right.
in bolstering their spirits,
Right.
and defending their beliefs against a hostile world.
Speaking of defending beliefs, we haven't really talked about how Hassan navigated the very real dangers
Yeah.
of speaking out against powerful people.
Right.
I mean, he was challenging the status quo,
Yeah.
confronting the elite of his society.
Absolutely.
Did he face any repercussions for his outspokenness?
I mean, speaking truth to power always comes with risks, right?
Right.
And Hassan's situation was no exception.
Right. I mean, this is a society where honor and reputation
Exactly.
were paramount,
It was everything.
and his words could have very serious consequences.
Absolutely.
So how did he navigate those dangers? Was he ever threatened or silenced?
Well, there's no record of him being directly silenced,
Okay.
but there is this fascinating anecdote
Okay.
that sheds light on, I think, the complexities that he faced.
Okay.
And it involves the Battle of the Trench,
Oh, wow. Okay.
which was a pivotal moment in early Islamic history.
Right. This is the battle where they dug a trench
Yeah.
around Medina.
To defend against a much larger enemy force.
Yeah.
And during this battle, the prophet's aunt, Sophia,
Okay.
was defending a fortress
Okay.
with the women and children.
Wow.
And she sees an enemy soldier approaching.
Oh, no.
And she calls out to Hassan,
Okay.
urging him to do something.
And what did he do? Did he, like, spring into action?
That's the interesting part.
Okay.
He seems to have had a genuine fear
Really?
of the battlefield.
Wow, that's surprising. I mean, he was so bold in his poetry, so fearless with his words.
It's interesting to see that contrast.
Right.
And I think it reminds us that courage takes many forms.
Right.
Not everyone's a warrior,
Right.
and that's okay.
Right.
Hassan's battlefield was the realm of words.
Yeah.
And he fought on that front.
He did. He did. So even though he wasn't a physical fighter, his contributions were no less valuable
Absolutely
to
not.
the early Muslim community.
No less valuable.
And it's also important to remember, I think, that even the most devoted individuals can stumble. And we talked about the incident where Hassan spread slander
Yes.
about Aisha, the prophet's wife.
A grave error
And that was a major turning point
was
in his story.
Yeah.
That's where his quick tongue.
Yeah. His tendency to gossip
Right.
got the better of him.
And the consequences were significant, Safwan.
Yes.
A man wrongly accused in the slander.
Physically attacked him.
Right.
It was a raw
It's understandable.
human reaction
Right.
to being unjustly accused.
But what's remarkable is how Aisha herself
Yes.
responded.
She defended him.
Wow.
She said that people should not speak ill of him.
Okay.
And she reminded them of his contributions
Wow.
to Islam. And even years later, when some criticized him
Right?
for his past mistake,
Yeah.
she again spoke up
That's incredible.
in his defense.
What an example of mercy.
It is.
She didn't hold a grudge, even though she was the one who was wronged.
It's a reminder that we should always strive to see the good in others, even when they've made mistakes.
Right. Everyone deserves a chance at redemption.
They do.
And Hassan's story ultimately is a story of redemption.
It is. He messed up big time,
He did.
but he dedicated the rest of his life
Right.
to making amends.
To using his talents in the service of Islam.
Yes.
So what can we take away from this deep dive into the life of Hassan Ibn Thabit? I mean, he was a complex figure, a gifted poet, a devoted Muslim.
Flawed human being.
Yeah, just like all of us.
He was. His story offers so many layers of insight.
It does.
We see the transformative power of faith,
Yeah.
the evolution of an artist,
Yeah.
the importance of using our talent for a greater purpose.
Right.
We see the human capacity for both great mistakes and great forgiveness.
And perhaps most importantly, it reminds us that even in the face of adversity, we should never underestimate the power of words.
The power of words.
To inspire, to defend, and to shape the course of history. So as we reflect on the life and legacy of Hassan Ibn Thabit, it's worth asking ourselves, what talents do we possess, and how can we use them to make a positive impact on the world around us?
That's the question.
Something to ponder indeed.